Hello everyone, this is Showtime 112. The Arab-Israeli War of Attrition was a somewhat forgotten conflict, lasting in its broadest sense between July 1967 and August 1970. More narrowly, its beginning can be placed in July 1969. Although largely static, it still involves significant ground fighting, mostly in the form of artillery duels and commando raids. Most interestingly for our purposes, the War of Attrition was primarily an air war. For a detailed introduction and strategic overview, watch our previous video. You can find the link in the description. Most of the action in the War of Attrition took place in the Suez Canal area, where Egyptian forces on the western side faced Israeli troops on the eastern side. The first aerial clashes occurred in July 1967, merely a month after the end of the Six-Day War. On 8th of July, Israeli Mirage 3 pilot Avihu Ben Nun claimed an Egyptian MiG-21, but the most intense combat occurred on 15th of July 1967. The Egyptian Air Force, at the time still officially designated as the United Arab Republic Air Force, was ordered to gather intelligence on Israeli positions along the Suez Canal. Several reconnaissance flights took place on 8th and 9th of July, while on 14th and 15th of July, airstrikes were launched. In response, the Israelis scrambled their Mirage 3s, which led to 3 claims against Egyptian fighter bombers on the 15th. Asher Tzneer of 119 Squadron claimed 2 MiG-17s, while Agmon Yoram of 101 Squadron claimed shooting down a Su-7. Egyptian MiG-21s clashed with Israeli Mirages, and the engagement led to multiple claims on both sides. One Egyptian MiG was claimed by Prigat Eliezer, while Ran Ronen claimed another. Ronen's victory is significant because it was achieved using the Israeli-made Shafrir air-to-air missile. This weapon generally produced poor results, with dozens being fired during the Six-Day War without a single hit, and was considered inferior not only to the American AIM-9B, but also to the Soviet R-3S. Shafrir's successor, the Shafrir II, achieved much better results after its introduction in 1969. This particular victory, however, was achieved at nearly ideal conditions, as according to the description given by Ran Ronen in his autobiography, the MiG-21 pilot had disengaged from combat with Ronen and his wingman, believing that the Israelis had done the same, and he was flying towards the Nile Delta area at medium altitude. Egyptian pilots claim no fewer than 4 Israeli Mirages shot down in combat during this period. How do these claims compare to confirmed losses? Only one Israeli Mirage was officially lost in July 1967. This was Shahak number 6620, flown by Shlomo Egozi, who ejected safely on 15th of July. The cause of loss is listed as AAA and combat with an Egyptian MiG-21, meaning that at least one Egyptian claim can likely be verified. Whether the other claims were accurate or not, they nevertheless boosted the dangerously low Egyptian morale. On the other hand, the Israelis claimed 6 victories in July, and Arab sources state that at least 4 fighters were lost in these operations. This period of intense operations was followed by a ceasefire. The Soviets exerted significant pressure on the Egyptians, believing they were not ready for another major war, and the United Arab Republic Air Force shifted its focus to reorganization and training. The Israelis introduced alert detachments for their Mirage squadrons at the airbase in central Sinai, known to them as Rafidim, and to the Egyptians as Bir Gefgafa. The 3 Mirage squadrons rotated detachments with a change every 2 weeks. Period of relative inactivity followed. By the end of 1967, only a single claim had been made by Israeli pilots. On 10th of October 1967, Avihu Ben-Nun was leading a pair of Mirages from Rafidim, intercepting 4 Egyptian MiG-21s that had penetrated Israeli-controlled airspace at dusk. Ben-Nun attacked the MiG leader with a Shafir missile, but the weapon missed. He then engaged the MiG wingman and claimed shooting it down with his cannons. The year 1967 ended with a significant improvement for the Israeli Air Force, which received the first examples of a new aircraft type, the A-4 Skyhawk. This small attack aircraft would become one of the most important types in Israeli service, and it saw its first combat use as early as February 1968, when 4 available Skyhawks flew missions against PLO camps in Jordan. The introduction of the A-4 allowed Israeli Mirage units to abandon the air-to-ground role and focus exclusively on air-to-air combat. Relative calm returned until 8th of September 1968, when the Egyptians launched a massive artillery barrage across the Suez Canal. Over 10,000 rounds were fired in a period of 4 hours, followed by a commando raid. Aerial activity increased again, and Israeli aircraft were confidently crossing the Suez at altitudes of 2,000 to 3,000 feet, completely unopposed. The Egyptians felt the need to halt these incursions and organized an ambush. The task was assigned to Colonel Mamdouh Taliba, Deputy Commander of Air Brigade 104 of the Air Defense Command. The plan was relatively simple. 2 MiG-21 F-13s were to act as bait, pretending to be on a reconnaissance mission, while 4 additional MiG-21s were tasked with attacking the Israeli interceptors lured in by the bait element. The mission was launched on 23rd of October 1968. The formation was led by Colonel Fawzi Salama, the commanding officer of No. 26 Squadron. He and Reda El-Iraqi formed the first pair of shooters. Captain Ahmed Anwar and First Lieutenant Abdul El-Hamid Talalat formed the second shooter pair, while the bait element was flown by Major Ali El-Masek and Medhat Zaki. El-Masek and Zaki were to fly over Sinai and, after attracting the attention of Israeli fighters, turn west and lead them into the area where the 4 other MiGs were waiting at low altitude, below Israeli radar coverage. Reda El-Iraqi later recalled that after receiving news of approaching mirages, his flight turned east and continued at low level. They were surprised to discover 4 mirages instead of the expected pair. Each Egyptian shooter pair selected one Israeli pair as its target. Colonel Fawzi Salama, the flight leader, opened fire first. According to El-Iraqi, Salama's missile struck a mirage, which exploded. The second Mirage in that pair dove towards the ground, but was then engaged by El-Iraqi, who fired his own missiles. This Mirage was also hit. The second Egyptian pair likewise claimed to have shot down their targets, with the entire engagement lasting no more than 80 seconds. How many of these Egyptian claims can be matched with Israeli records? None. In fact, there is no Israeli source confirming that this encounter even took place. The Egyptian explanation is that since the battle occurred over Israeli-controlled territory, no wreckage could be recovered by them, and the Israelis took advantage of the situation to deny the event, fearing a possible drop in morale. Contrary to popular belief, the Israelis do not deny all losses to enemy fighters. 12 Mirages and Neshers are listed as having been lost in combat with Arab fighters between 1967 and 1973, while 3 more were lost due to fuel starvation following combat. While it's not impossible that the Israelis suffered losses in this engagement, it's difficult to believe that the Soviet R-3S missile, known in the West as the AA-2 Atoll, could have achieved such accuracy at relatively low altitude. It's unclear how many missiles were fired by the Egyptians, but according to El-Iraqi's recollection, his leader, Colonel Salama, fired a single missile, while El-Iraqi himself uses the plural missiles to describe his own attack, implying that he launched both of his. Even if the second Egyptian pair had fired all 4 of its missiles and assuming no multiple hits on a single target, this would result in a 57% accuracy rate for the engagement, far higher than the missile's typical performance. In any case, the Egyptian pilots were invited to lunch with President Nasser, decorated, and each received a reward of £500. The Egyptian strategy of inflicting casualties on Israeli ground forces appeared to be working, as it resulted in 25 Israeli soldiers killed and 51 wounded in 2 artillery attacks in September and October. These were unacceptably high losses for a country such as Israel, prompting a response in the form of commando raids against Egyptian targets, including bridges over the Nile, dams, and power transformers. As for aerial activity, it resumed with increased intensity in 1969. Let us know in the comments how interested you are in this topic, and as always, keep watching Showtime 112.